Hey everyone, how's it going today, and welcome back to another video. So as most of you guys know probably by now is that we are sadly living in relatively dark time periods, and even more specifically we are essentially going through a recession right now. There are obviously a lot of mixed opinions about this. I know that there's some people that will probably say that we are in a recession. There's other people that say that we are going into recession but are not quite there yet. Feel free to comment whether or not you think we're in a recession. But regardless about that, is that the big idea is that in today's video I really want to talk really deeply about one of the most important topics related to the recession, which is going to be everything related to the housing market. Because the situation right now is that regardless of whether or not you're interested in buying a home now, if you are interested in buying a home, today's video is definitely going to be very relevant. But even if you are not interested in buying a home right now, chances are is that if you're someone that hopefully at least has shelter above your head, or you're looking for shelter above your head, the big idea is that regardless of whether you are a buyer or a renter, everything in the world of the housing market is now going to be impacted very soon. So today's update, what I really want to just talk about is the situation with the housing market, some new breaking information and statistics that just came out, some changes, what this means for us, and then maybe to end this with a little bit of some more personal insights about where I think this is going to be headed. So if you are either a buyer or a renter, you can kind of see why this is important to us and why this matters. So we're going to get started, but as always, real fast, before we begin, if you guys enjoy videos like this, remember to smash the like button, or you guys can watch to the end to decide, or otherwise consider subscribing and hitting the bell for similar videos like this. And of course, as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts about honestly just really anything, room for improvements, suggestions, or really just always great to hear from you guys. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So to start, there is a lot of new breaking information that officially just came out recently, and by recently we're talking about in the last 24 hours of release date. So if you're watching this into the future, this is probably still going to be relatively relevant, I'd say, until probably about the end of October 2022. But the first new information is that they just found out in a recent statistic that the fixed mortgage interest rate has now officially reached 6.73% as of yesterday, or the time period that we are releasing this video. This is pretty much a graph that shows what the interest rates were like in the last 2 years. So the big idea is that, as you can tell from this, is that during most of the pandemic it was relatively flat and definitely certainly very low. Granted, housing prices were very high, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But the big idea is that ever since the last couple of months, with especially this last specific month, we are now starting to see a massive rise again, where the interest rate is now 6.73%. So that is a very massive change in transition to really be able to soak in, because it means that it means that to get a mortgage, the interest rate now is now higher than it's been in the last let's just say, well, according to this graph, 2 years, but technically many years even before that. So why this is particularly important is that because it means that if we're trying to currently buy a home right now, essentially it's that the prices of the home, the really great news is that it's going to potentially now collapse and drop. But it also means that when we actually take out a mortgage to fund the home, we're probably going to have to now pay a higher interest rate. Now the really great news, at least for buyers, because again, there's one person's gain is always sometimes one person's not so much of a gain. But the big idea is that, however, with that being said, one of the really great news for specifically anyone that might be a buyer is that it's expected that we went from a seller's market, and that over the next couple of months, and by basically the end of 2023, the market will now start to shift to favor the buyers. So what that basically means is that the price of the real estate is going to drop well enough to compensate for the increased cost or the increased percentages of the interest rate that's currently going up. So that's really the big idea and the breaking news to really be able to put out there. Now, when it comes to the world of the actual housing costs, The new research that was recently conducted has actually now been released to announce that one of the really big, also great news for anyone that's a buyer, and in this case also even for anyone that happens to be a renter, is really about the fact that for the very first time in over 10 years, we are now starting to see housing prices fall a little bit. So it hasn't fully collapsed yet, but we are now on the road to the collapse, or certainly we are now seeing the downturn start happening. What happened is that for the last 10 years, we saw housing prices rise, and then we saw it rise less, but still rise. So basically it was still rising, but it was just kind of rising a little bit. But for the very first time in over about 10 years, it was recently announced that we are now starting to see the prices actually decline a little bit over the last just month or so. And the even more better news for just anyone that happens to be a buyer is that it specifically declines in many major cities now by about 3 to 4%. So while 3 to 4 might not sound like a very large number individually by itself, the big idea is that when you're talking about how expensive real estate is, I can certainly speak on a more personal perspective, which I might talk about in a little bit, here in New York City, which is where I'm filming it from. A 1-bedroom apartment can sometimes go for $1 million. So it is very wild that you work so hard if you even, are able to someday achieve a 7-figure net worth. And then once you get the 7-figure net worth, if you even can get a 7-figure net worth, here in New York City, all you can afford is basically a room with 1 bedroom. But the really big breaking news is that now officially it's now started to decline, and even more specifically by about 3.4%. So when you factor that in, 3 to 4% is about $30,000 to $40,000 of a $1 million home. Now it shows you how even 1%, when you're talking about $1 million, is a lot of money. And when you factor in the fact that this trend is only expected to continue falling even further, it means that we are on the right track for people that are looking to try to get a home for the absolute cheapest price possible. Now obviously from sellers, this is everything that I say, just reverse it, the opposite. But for buyers at least, this is the case right now. But the big idea and the bottom line significance to all of this stuff is that what this really just shows you is that at least we're finally starting to see prices cool down and look a lot more reasonable. Because we've had a lot of very insanely high prices for homes in the last couple of years. I can certainly even talk about on very personal levels. I don't know about what the media says, but even on a real life basis, that when I talk to people around me, nobody except actually not nobody, but very few people I know in my specific area here in New York City are even talking about trying to buy a home anytime soon, at least certainly over the last couple of years, because of how expensive things were. When you're talking about paying potentially $800,000 for a guess how many bedroom? 0. A 0-bedroom apartment, just a studio, can sometimes be $800,000. It becomes absolutely out of the budget. This is especially even more true because with inflation going up right now, it means that people also have a lot less money to physically spend on a lot of things. And so every single dollar counts when you are in these financial situations. So why do I say all of this stuff is that it means that we're at least starting to see things become a lot more reasonable. And it means that there might hopefully now become a start of some level of interest for people to now consider becoming home buyers. And that's probably one of the most important things, especially with all of the inflation and everything that's going on right now in our world. So the big idea is that even off of media and everything that you've been hearing on the news, it just logically makes sense to see that why the home prices are probably going to be expected to fall even further as we go moving forward. But of course, how much will home prices fall? All of this stuff is what we probably will have to now find out in the future in one of the more future episodes of The Kevin Show, or this show, or that we're just giving a name to at this point. So the big idea is that beyond that is that that's pretty much what I really just wanted to cover in today's update. So if you guys hopefully found something insightful and haven't done so, remember to smash the like button, or feel free to comment a suggestion or room for improvement. Always open to hearing them. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell as we get more information, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.